Hey everybody, my name is Philip. Earlier this year I started a journey through God's Word, one chapter at a time. I wanted to see if I could pull out some real life lessons that we can use in our lives today. So whether you have read the Bible for years or you're new to God's Word, my intention is to break down each chapter as simply and as clearly as I possibly can and try to leave us with some takeaways that we can use in our life. So I hope these videos are beneficial to you in some way, and I hope you enjoy them. Welcome back, everybody. We are in 1 Chronicles today. We're going to be in chapter 29 today. And this is the final chapter in the book of 1 Chronicles. And it's King David's sort of final public moment. And to be quite honest with you, it is inspiring stuff. But let me start off by asking a question. What does leadership, true leadership, look like to you? How does generosity, humility, and worship shape a nation and or shape a heart? Let's dig in with those questions fresh in our mind. In verse 1, chapter 29 begins with King David turning to this national assembly, this big gathering of people, and he says, "My son Solomon, whom God has clearly chosen as the next king of Israel, is still young and inexperienced." So David's saying basically, hey guys, Solomon is going to need your help. And he is trying to make it clear to the people around him that this is not just a simple palace or a simple building being built. This is God's temple. This is God's holy temple. So the stakes here are high, and David understands that. Then David puts his money where his mouth is. He's already gathered a ton of resources from around the kingdom, but then he says, hey, I'm going to give out of my personal stash too. So check this out. He gives 3,000 talents of gold, 7,000 talents of silver. Now, I, being the curious fellow that I am, would like to know what this is equivalent to today. So, looky here. A talent of gold is worth between $13.5 million and $30 million. Let's just say it's 13.5 for the sake of this. Now, over here, talents of silver look to be about 7.4 million. So that is approximately, give or take, $20 million that David gives out of his own personal stash. That's substantial. But that's literally a ton of money. And he does it from his own bank account, which is just kind of cool. And he says in verse 3, "And now because of my devotion to the temple of God, I am giving all of my own private treasures of gold and silver to help with the construction. This is in addition to the building materials I have already collected for his holy temple." Now notice the reason that David gives here. He says, because I love God's house, because of how I feel about God's house, that's why I'm giving. And I think that really shows us the heart of true generosity. Then what's really amazing about this is the leaders and some of the other folks there, the tribal heads, the military commanders, and even regular officials start giving voluntarily of their own personal stashes, and it turns into this full-blown generosity giving moment and movement. It says in verse 9, "The people rejoiced over the offerings, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord, and King David was filled with joy." So everybody is pumped up. Not because they were forced to give, but because they gave willingly. I think this chapter shows us how generosity can really have a contagious type effect, and it makes you feel fulfilled. It makes you feel good. And then in verse 10, David starts praying in front of the entire crowd, and it is a powerful prayer. It's really a big moment for David in this prayer. He starts his prayer off with praise. In verse 11, he says, "Yours, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, and the majesty. Everything in the heavens and on earth is yours." And David starts to let these real emotions kind of bleed through, and he's like, who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give generously as this? That we should be able to be in a place like this. He recognizes that it's all from God anyways. In verse 15, David says, "We are here only a moment, visitors and strangers in the land, as our ancestors were before us. Our days on earth are like a passing shadow, gone so soon without a trace." David is not flexing here. He's really showing humility. He's being humble. He's acknowledging that even the most powerful king is still just a shadow passing through history. I think we've all had that sort of realization at some point, hopefully, that our time here is limited and we should be striving for eternal things. So after the offering and the prayer, the people celebrate big time with sacrifices and a national feast that includes everybody. And then finally, that was a drum roll. Finally, Solomon is crowned the official king. He's named the king. In verse 22 it says, "And again they crowned David's son Solomon as their new king. They anointed him before the Lord as their leader, and they anointed Zadok as priest." And just like that, the torch is passed from King David to King Solomon. King Solomon begins his kingship, and the transition is blessed and it's smooth, and God's presence is all over it. And then finally, at the end of this chapter, starting in verse 26, it's just a very small recap of David's reign for 40 years. In verse 28, it says, "He died at a ripe old age, having enjoyed a long life, wealth, and honor. Then his son Solomon ruled in his place." So I think it's really just a reminder to all of us that legacy is not about what we build. Legacy is about who we build up. David didn't just build wealth, he built a nation that loved, worshipped, and honored God. All right, so what can we learn from 1 Chronicles 29? What can we take away from 1 Chronicles 29? I think the first thing that I notice here is that generosity is a powerful thing. When we give freely from what we have, God rewards that generosity. Also, if you're a leader and you're giving freely, people that are under you will follow. So don't ever underestimate the impact of generosity. The second takeaway I have here is that legacy is about people, not about things. So David had set up Solomon to succeed, and I think for us, our influence has the ability to outlast our lifetimes in how we're building up the next generation, how we're setting up those behind us for success. And I think that's really what legacy is all about. And then just an overall sort of takeaway from King David's life, I think, although he made mistakes, and that is clear throughout the Bible, we all do. And I think ultimately David's legacy was one of leading through prayer, through praise, and through purpose. And I think that's the kind of leader that we should all aim to be. One that obeys God and seeks after God and His will in all the things that we do. So get out there and do something today that will impact the next generation for God. Won't He do it?